F1 finally makes its return to Sao Paolo for the first time this year in what is thought to be an interesting race, now that Mercedes have finally figured their way out, and now that, since both championships have already been won by Red Bull, drivers are more willing to take risks that were previously unthinkable. Does this mean we're going to get some amazing on-track action, and maybe Hamilton's first win of the season? Well, not really. Let me explain this and talk about local drama at the circuit, but first, a small introduction on this race. The Brazilian Grand Prix is raced on the José Carlos Passe Autodrome, also known as Interlagos for the many lakes in the area in Sao Paulo, Brazil. The circuit is a bit over 4 kilometers long, with elevation changes and narrow corners that make this circuit perfect for racing and action. This race is often regarded as one of the best ones on the calendar. It has been held every single year, except 2020 due to Corona, since 1962 when it was first announced. Not every edition was on this circuit, but most of them were. Well-placed DRS zones, corners difficult enough for drivers to make mistakes, and fast-changing weather makes this one of the races most people look forward to, and in particular, just like last year, it's planned to have a sprint race on Saturday and a normal race on Sunday. In this new format, we'll see 6 times in the next season. Going back to the drivers, Hamilton fans have been asking for a miracle at this race. Last year, Lewis won from last on the Saturday grid due to an unexpected penalty, but still managed to win, bringing around the Brazilian flag on his celebration lap. This would be an essential race for the Mercedes driver, since if he doesn't win here or in Abu Dhabi, this would be his first year ever without a win. Winning here would really be special, but things are not looking so well for both of the Silver Arrows. In fact, James Vowels, Mercedes strategy director, said that this year's race here will be really difficult not only to win, but to be competitive in. In this kind of circuit where high downforce is required, Mercedes seems to struggle a lot more than its opponents due to some high drag components placed on the car to increase grip and stability through corners. Another example of this was in Mexico, where despite Hamilton being in the podium spots for most of the race, he was unable to compete with Verstappen due to the nature of that racetrack. Ferrari is also expected to have a big comeback. In fact, the Italian team is believed to have played the waiting game at the Mexico Grand Prix just to strike back in these final races where their power units are still in good condition. Not only that, but they are also fighting against Mercedes for the second place in the Constructors' Championship. And even though the German car manufacturer has publicly explained why that would only be something against their interest of the 2023 season, getting less time in the wind tunnel, it would be an important honour to still finish second in the championship, the only year in the hybrid era they aren't first. What this means for them is hoping for a Ferrari DNF to close out the 40 points gap between them and the Maranello team, even though they will see a slight decrease in performance this weekend. On another topic, the weather forecast seems to be on the fans' side. Heavy rain is in fact expected on Friday, while the sprint race will probably be on a wet track, unlike the Sunday, when the racetrack should be dry at the end of the race, thanks to no more rain in the last part of the weekend. This is great news. A wet qualifying session could mean that we could see someone expected up on pole position, like George Russell did in Hungary or how Lando Norris did last year in Russia. Having a shake-up of the grid is always something intriguing, and we could see some great overtakes from this, or even a maiden race winner we've never seen before, even though some old drivers winning would still be something worth talking about. A wet sprint race could also get us some drama, with extreme overtakes to the limit like we're used to seeing nowadays with these 2022 cars. Being a wet race, we could also get the occasional spin in the gravel, meaning a safety car, meaning things could be shaken up a little like they need to. Some drivers don't really like the idea of the sprint race, regardless of being wet or dry, and one of them is Max Verstappen, reigning world champion and probable contender for this week's race. During an interview, he said, "For me, the weekend format isn't one that I enjoy. I don't mind the one practice and going straight into qualifying. I think it probably is even better." Basically, it's not just the Brazilian Grand Prix sprint race he's against, but this new format in general. It will probably need some fixing, but at the end of the day, it's all just more hard racing for the fans, meaning it should become a lot better with some tweaking from the FIA. Going back to the weather forecast, on Sunday we should expect a humid track with changing conditions. That will also make racing more difficult and more challenging for the cars, especially in the opening laps when they're full of fuel. Talking about the grid, not many teams will have penalties this weekend, as this is the penultimate race of the season, meaning not many teams want to throw the chance of getting the last few points out of the window now that the season is close to its end. One possible and probable penalty we will see could be Fernando Alonso's engine penalty. Since in Mexico he had to retire due to a cylinder failure, it is plausible that the team will have to change the whole power unit since inside repairs like this one are not allowed, meaning that they also risk going over the budget cap, creating even more drama against them and Red Bull. Another driver not expecting to be as competitive this weekend will sadly be Lando Norris. He reported that even though this season he's blown Danny Ric out of the water with his performances, the best of which is a podium in Imola, in the last few races their car just didn't feel right. This is probably because, unlike Alpine, McLaren are working towards reliability, sacrificing pure power in order to be able to finish the whole season with this engine and with the components that are currently mounted on their car, which will surely be difficult, but not impossible. It's clear that Norris or Ricciardo, but he's already been excluded from those who could win the race, won't be able to compete like he wants, and it's unclear how long he's willing to wait for a competitive car that lets him use his talent. For now, he and his teammates should just focus on catching up to Alpine, as with Alonso's DNF in the last race, they have gained a lot of precious points in the fight for 4th in the Constructors' Championship, which is still very much open. But this weekend's drama goes much deeper than you think. In fact, local people have been protesting on the streets all over Brazil for a political reason we won't get into since we're not a politics channel. Let's just say that people weren't happy about this year's elections. This led many teams to ask themselves whether or not they should race here. A drama broke out just like in Jeddah last year when a missile hit some oil reserves not far away from the track. The FIA has assured everyone that racing here this weekend will be completely safe. But just as they announced that, a Ferrari truck was stopped on the highway just like many other trucks, meaning it couldn't arrive to the circuit as scheduled. Brazil's Minister of Infrastructure says he's working on getting this situation to be resumed as soon as possible. And that's what we hope. Even though they're not winning anymore, it's not fair to exclude Ferrari from this race. Furthermore, the roads surrounding the Sao Paolo airport have mostly been blocked by protesters, making fans who are travelling to the circuit by plane unable to get there if the blockades aren't removed anytime soon. Of course, the question remains, how will the race be able to happen if this is the situation around Interlagos? Well, for one, everything is already improving day by day, with the president, who was the reason of all of this, having a speech about freedom of travelling and why protesters should leave the road. Man, with Formula 1, we never catch a break. So, what do you think? Will the race be able to be done this weekend? Will we see any update from the Federation on how they're planning to manage this situation? Let us know with a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe, because at 10,000 subscribers, we're going to become FIA officials and postpone every single race by one day so that they are all on a Monday. Don't ask why. No, not really, but you should subscribe anyway.